today's meeting and thank you for attending the meeting of the Licensing Act 2003 Subcommittee on Tuesday the 25th of February. Before we get started, I would like to run through some housekeeping rules. There are no planned fire alarms, so if it sounds, please leave via the emergency exits. Everybody in the room knows where the toilets are, so I don't need to point them out. And can I ask that all mobile phones are kept on silent, as mine is, thank God. Introductions, my name's Councillor Matthew Lynch. For those that are watching at home rather than in the room, and I am the Chair of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee and Chair of this committee. Can I ask members on my right to introduce themselves?
Christine Hayden, Councillor for Eccleston, Heskin, Charnock Richard, and a member of the Licensing Committee and the Subcommittee.
And can I ask the legal officer to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sushma Nari. I'm a solicitor on the legal department.
And licensing officer?
Yeah, my name's Nathan Allison. I'm the Principal Licence Officer for Chorley Council.
And we are also supported by Nina Neisser-Burke from Democratic Services.
Chair, may I introduce myself?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Aaron Beaver, one of the councillors for Chorley North West Ward and a member of the Licensing Committee. Thank you.
I'll remember to look up next time.
It's always significant.
The hearing will proceed as follows. Subcommittee to decide. Sorry, the applicant has sent apologies, but has provided representations. The hearing will proceed as follows. Subcommittee to decide whether to allow person specified on Regulation 8 notice permission to speak. Our licensing officer will then outline the report. Questions to the licensing officer for clarification will be permitted from subcommittee members and the applicant or representative. However, they are not here, therefore I am expecting there are going to be no questions from them. The applicant and representative will then be invited to make representations in support. However, as I've previously stated, written representations have been given. Questions would then have been allowed to the applicant from the representatives. That will prove rather difficult as they are not here. The applicant's representative will then be invited to sum up. The applicant or representative and officers who are not directly supporting the subcommittee will be excluded from the meeting at this point as we enter deliberations. Following deliberations, we will request that the applicant re-enter the meeting so that I can deliver our decision. The applicant will be issued with a detailed notice of decision within 5 working days after this hearing. Therefore, I'll go straight to opening the meeting. Apologies.
We've had apologies from the applicant, Chair.
Item number 1, declarations of any interest. If a member has a pecuniary interest, they must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Does anybody have any interest to declare? No. Okay. Moving on to procedure. The procedure for the meeting has already been outlined. However, a copy of the procedure can be found on agenda page 3. Moving straight to item 3, determination of whether to authorise a performance of hypnotism. Can I ask Nathan Housen to present his case?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to members of the committee. As you've set out, this is an application to authorise a performance of hypnotism. It's proposed to be held at the Brotherton Arms on Eves Lane on the 29th of March 2025. The applicant is David Rawson, and he performs under the stage name Dave Rawson. The reason it's been referred to the committee is to advise the subcommittee that an application has been made, and for the subcommittee to determine whether to authorise the performance in accordance with the provisions of the Hypnotism Act 1952. I'm going to go through the report. I'll start on agenda page 5 if members wish to follow along. So in England and Wales, an act of hypnotism isn't a licensable activity under the Licensing Act 2003. Therefore, it's necessary for an application to be made to the council for authority to stage a performance under the Hypnotism Act. It's a criminal offence to stage a performance, an exhibition or a demonstration of hypnotism without authorisation having been given by the council. And hypnotism includes, in the sort of legal definition, hypnotism, mesmerism, easy for me to say, and any similar act or process which produces or is intended to produce in any person any form of induced sleep or trance in which the susceptibility of the mind of that person to suggestion or direction increases or is intended to be increased, but does not include hypnotism, mesmerism, or any similar act or process which is self-induced. As I said before, it's an offence to hypnotise anybody under the age of 18. At the Licensing Subcommittee of the 24th of April 1996, the decision was made that authorisations for the demonstration or exhibition of hypnotism would normally be refused. There is a right of appeal against a refusal to authorise a performance, and that's directly to the Crown Court. And then turning to the application at hand, on the 29th of January 2025, an application was made to authorise the performance of hypnotism at the Brotherton Arms on Eves Lane, Chorley, on the 23rd of March 2025. The subcommittee will find a copy of that application at Appendix 1 of the report. In support of the application, the applicant provided a certificate of public liability insurance, and the subcommittee will find a copy of that insurance certificate appended at Appendix 2. And there are general conditions relating to the authorisation of hypnotism, and those are appended at Appendix 3. In accordance with the regulations, a copy of the application was sent to both Lancashire Constabulary and Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service, and during that consultation period, no representations were received. Turning then to the conclusions, in arriving at their decision, members can authorise the performance subject to the general conditions at Appendix 3, authorise the performance subject to general conditions at Appendix 3, any further conditions that are deemed appropriate, or refuse to authorise the performance. Chair, in the papers you'll find there's a supplementary agenda. Obviously Mr. Rawson is unable to attend, so he has provided some written representations, and you'll find those at agenda page 20. Other than that, Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Just before we move on, Nathan, item 2, subcommittee to decide whether to allow persons specified on Regulation 8 notice permission to speak. I did miss it out, I do apologise. However, do we have anybody that is willing to speak under that?
Yeah, there has been no request received, and so you don't need to carry out that.
Thank you. Just get that little bit of housekeeping out of the way. Any questions?
Nathan, it's a long time since we had an application, 1996, for an event such as this, I believe, according to the information that we've been given. Is there any reason for that?
That's a good question. I don't actually, council records, because of the length of time, I'm not actually sure at the time we did receive an application. At the time there was a wider thing going on in relation to stage hypnotism. I think simply we just haven't had an application. I don't know if there's any specific reason. Obviously this event has been arranged by a premises, and therefore an application has been made. I'm not aware of any other reasons why it's been such a long period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beaver.
It's just at paragraph 7, the same thing about when it was last requested would normally be refused. What happened then? What's changed now?
So at the time, it was shortly after a death of a person who had been hypnotised that day. The time the person who, or the parents of the person who had, passed away, organised a campaign around banning stage hypnotism. There were numerous different things that happened around the coroner and investigating whether hypnotism was involved in the death of that person. And to the best of my knowledge, that never resulted in any finding that hypnotism contributed in any way to the death of that person. However, there was this campaign around stage hypnotism at the time. And I think that, without seeing the full council documents other than, simply the decision, I suspect that's what contributed towards that. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of time passed since then. Stage hypnotism is quite more, occurs around the country, I would think, without issue. And also the Licensing Act 2003, which is the usual way for any performance of entertainment other than this, that's a new act which came into force in 2005. So the whole sort of structure, I suppose, of councils regulating entertainment has completely changed since that decision was made. Of course, that's a decision of the council, but the council is the subcommittee is entitled to depart from that if there's good reason to do so.
Nathan, Mr. Rawson refers to doing thousands of shows over multiple authorities. As part of the process for this hearing, have you found any information or received any comment from other authorities which would cause concern for the committee?
No, I did ask the question on the most recent performance, but I haven't received any response from that authority. So I'm not aware of any information which would suggest there's anything untoward in that performance.
Anything further? Obviously, at this point,
Only just that Mr. Rawson has given us a history of his performances, and they're quite rare actually. I think they were in October 24, and then one in April 24, and then back to 93. So I don't know whether he's in semi-retirement or not, but he doesn't seem to have thousands going on at the minute.
Yeah, I think that's partly right. I think also he performs shows abroad, and obviously I think what's been referenced in the application is where authorisation has been given under the Hypnotism Act. Obviously, that authorisation wouldn't need to be given if it was performed somewhere else in the world. So I think there is consistent shows, but they're just not in the UK.
At this point, we'd normally ask the applicant if he had any questions. Subject to his absence, we will move on. The applicant has made representations in the addendum on agenda page 20. I'm sure members have read that, as I have. Is there any points of clarification that members require? Okay, Nathan, is there anything that you would make note of through the representation?
No, just to say that the information that's been provided is essentially agreed. It's noted that Mr. Rawson is a member of the Federation of Ethical Stage Hypnosis, and there's some information on that website, and that includes a code of conduct. And so, I think that's a relevant consideration in deciding whether or not to authorise the performance.
On the application, it does ask about whether or not there's going to be anyone on the stage looking after. Sorry.
It refers to minders.
Minders, yeah. To which there aren't any. So, is that something that's normally required, or is it? It's just himself actually looking after everybody?
Yeah, I think the consideration is really about how many people are intended to be authorised, hypnotised, and whether or not that would be a necessity. I think it would be expected that if there's a relatively small number of people to be hypnotised, then that would be acceptable without having minders, or if if they were going to be in different places or in different rooms and things, and that's not proposed in this application.
So therefore, if he gets hordes of people wanting to be hypnotised, has he got a cut-off limit to what he can actually do, or are we going to set one?
I believe in the application he
It refers
states
to
that
2 to 8 people on the
Yes.
stage, and dependent on how many he can hypnotise, because as you would be aware, hypnotism only works on those that want to be hypnotised, as opposed to those that do not want to be hypnotised. So I would imagine, having viewed one of these shows many years ago, there is certain things that they do generally to wean out people and then get them up on stage. And I think it refers to, in one of the conditions, that dehypnotising not just the people but the audience as well. So again, I think it's well covered in the conditions. Councillor Beaver.
I recently watched one of Durham Brown's things on TV, and he selects them from the audience, he brings them on stage, he then goes through a further process and deselects them and dehypnotises them, and there's no one else on stage. So I'm, being as a member of the ethical committee, assuming that it's going to be on those lines. So I didn't see a concern in the TV programme, so I don't see a problem in this. If he's travelling around the world, he's well accustomed to it and he knows his process.
I would refer to the 27 years experience as well.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Therefore, if there's no further questions, I would normally ask the applicant to sum up. However, I am satisfied that in their absence we are providing enough information to go to the decision-making process. Therefore, can I ask all those not involved to exit the room, and for YouTube to